I was born March the 14th, 1958. I was 2 years old on March of 14th of 1960. April the 9th, I had run out of the house there. Well, take it back. My cousins was there, and my grandpa come to get them. My mother had been babysitting them, and when they went out to the house it wasn't but just about 12 foot or 20 foot to the fence. Then you had enough room between the fence and the road to park a vehicle, get out of it. They went. I followed them outside the house and the door and stuff. And they didn't know it, and then Arnie back and the other one got in Poppy's truck to go home and was waiting on Poppy, and they seen me run out in front of the truck into the highway, and there was a car coming, driven by Bill Bishop, and he hit me, and it knocked me 60 foot, and my skull was laid back. You see my brains, knocked me out of my booties, and which my mother had been warned about the booties from my aunt not to buy some because she had a bad dream that Aunt Lynn that I would something bad would happen. Well, anyway, I got hit by the car, knocked 60 foot, and it knocked the booties off of me. And then they rushed my dad to come out to get me, and they didn't have ambulance back then. They used hearses, and so the hearse wasn't there. And then my dad come out and Pete Foster and his mother was coming by in the car, and my daddy picked me up and laid me in her lap, and she held my body in one arm and my head in a rag in the other because of my brain, the way my skull was done. And they rushed me to the clinic down at Dale Barton, and they told me there wasn't nothing they could do for me to stick me with a needle and not let me go out of it. If I went out of it, that I'd die. And so they rushed me to Appalachian Regional Hospital at South Memphis, Kentucky. And I had Dr. Byrne was my doctor, and they had sewed me up, and I had leakage of the brain for approximately 2 weeks, I guess. And I was turning blue in the face, and my mother was asking what was they going to do for me, and they said there wasn't nothing that they could do for me. They didn't know all they could do, and so she had them to Jerry and Jeff, his father, bring the ambulance hearse to the hospital to transport me to St. Mary's Hospital in Huntington, West Virginia, where I underwent 7 brain buildups. And then they give me up to die for the first 30 days. And the first sign of living that I had showed them after the surgery was that I turned a ring on a nurse's finger, and that tickled them severely. Then after that, they would, I was in a cast on one leg and around my hip and stuff, and I couldn't bend, and I would pull myself up by the rails of the bed, and when I got ready to go lay back down, I would wobble down to the foot of the bed and just fall straight back. When I come out of surgery, they said I wouldn't cry, I'd just ask for my pretties and play with them. When the nuns would come in, I didn't like the nuns because of their hats or whatever. I just didn't get along with them. Well, the nurses would, after they seen that 30 days was up, that I was going to live, they said I'd be a vegetable all my life. My mother had her Aunt Nell Parsley, praying woman, God-fearing woman, told her, said that God didn't do nothing halfway, that he was going to heal me, and that when I lived, I was going to be smart, that he didn't do a halfway job. And so after the 30 days was up, they said I'd be a vegetable all my life. They would get me up out of the bed and 3 o'clock in the morning and give me ice cream and rock me in a chair. And the day before, well, back up a little, this time that I was there And I remember from my childhood being on a white stone under a beech tree outside of a city gate. A city looked like off to the side of me. And when I would get off of the stone, I would be in pain. But when I sat down on the stone, this white stone, I didn't feel no pain. So I stayed on the white stone, and I had my knees up and then my arms around my knees, sitting there patiently. And I never did forget that. And the day that I got ready to leave the hospital, about 6 months later, I think it was, or 9, I can't remember exactly, there was another little boy in there that me and him had grown close friends. And the windows would pull in and the bottom would raise up. And his dad had given him a pocket watch. And my dad had sent me a red metal truck with a yellow dump bed. And he was getting out the same day I was. And him and I dug a hole outside on the gravel roof by the wall of the hospital. And I put my truck down in it, and he dropped the pocket watch that he had in it. And we both covered him up with gravels. Why we did that, I still to this day don't know, but I wished I knew his name, but I don't. I ended up coming home. I remember having a cake when I got home. And we lived in an old house. And that's all I remember of that. I had a rough time growing up. Me and Kent would fight, and we would fight severely. He choked me one time, and then I thought he was going to kill me, and Maud sent her 2 boys over, Maud Christian, and they put him off. I mean, Kent was a nervous child, and he was on nerve medicine. And then he said if he couldn't choke me, he would drown me. And another time, he tied me up to a sled, and he pushed me down Graveyard Mountain, and left me tied to the sled, and it took me about an hour to get out. And all my life, I've been claustrophobic, so I don't know if that had any cause of it or whether I was just born that way. I lived in pain most of my life as a kid. I went to work early. I went to work at the age of 12. I went to work for Troy Hinkle in a furniture store in the evenings and on the weekends. And I didn't do heavy stuff. I lifted some furniture, moved stuff around, and kept the furniture store clean until I was older. And then I started going out on the truck with them and delivering furniture and taking care of raw material and etc. What you do in a furniture store. And then I'd walk next door to the gas station and pump gas till from 6 o'clock to 10 or 10:30, and then go home and milk a cow and do what homework I had and lay down and sleep, and then get up in the morning and milk a cow and go to school. Some days I went to school smelling like cow manure, well fertilized, I guess. Oh, the mountain man, the smell of the mountain man. Well, moving on down the road, I got married to Paulette. I was in love with her ever since I saw her. I was always backward, afraid to tell her. I thought she was so much better than me because she had long hair, and I put her right up there. I was like Mary, Mother of Jesus, and I just wasn't good enough. One day I come home, and I seen her run up to the house because Paulette lit up the holler next to me up on the hill, and Leroy and them. I run home to watch her walk up the hill. And as she's walking up the hill, just an old thing hit my mind, and I said it, and I didn't know my mother was behind me. And I said, Paulette went up the hill, Leroy right behind her. Paulette stood door tire shoe, and Leroy saw her coffee grinder. And whap! I got slapped from behind. And I turned around. I didn't know you was back here. She said, I didn't know you. Said, you ain't going to be saying that? Or anyway, my mother was a very religious person. Then, finally we got married. We was fixing to get married, and we didn't, and she married another, and he was gone, and then it's back to me, and we got married, to make a long story short. And we've been in love for 30-some years now. I got very sick November of 11, around the end of the month, I got to where I couldn't move, and I was on oxygen, and I had a bad spell. And my mother pulled her car up to the back of the house, but I couldn't move it. I had to turn up my oxygen, and finally I got to the car, and she took me to the ER. And they ended up sending me to Jackson. A lot of things I talked out of my head. And while I was in there, I was pretty deathly sick. They thought they was going to have to ventilate me, put me on morphine. But I got to soul searching, and I asked God to search my soul. And if there was anything at all between me and Him that wasn't right, I wanted Him to cleanse me and forgive me. And whatever He'd bring to my mind, I would repent over it if I've done any more wrong. And the Lord took me to the devil was to fight me, tell me I wasn't right. I was in my soul be lost, but Jesus took me to a place, a pasture that was green grass, about 6 inches long, and I seen these 2 sheep. And I turned around and I seen Jesus standing upon a hill, like a little knoll, with a rod and a staff in his hand. And this sheep, one of them, looked at the other one and he said, "This is the most choice pasture to eat, so pleasant." And he said, "We don't have a thing to worry about because the Master stands on the hill and he's got the rod to beat off any evil that would come after us. And he has the hook on it in case we fall." And I didn't know at the time that when sheep fell, they couldn't get up, that the shepherd would take the hook and lift them back up on their feet. Well, the other sheep walked over to the river, and it flowed so slow that you couldn't see it moving. And he took a sip of the water, and he turned around and he told the other sheep that was there laying that it was so refreshing. So I could hear, it was on it, I could hear these sheep talk and understand what they was saying. But with God, everything will be in perfect harmony. I returned back to myself in the hospital, and the nurse came in and I asked her if she could take the CPAP off of me to where I could just breathe on the oxygen tubing instead of having something on my face strapped and blasting it into me. So she took it off and gave me hooked up to the oxygen on the wall, and then she fixed me a mask beside of me for backup oxygen in case my oxygen stat dropped low. And I'd watch the monitor, and as my oxygen stat would drop low, I would take it and cuff it over my mouth and get double oxygen and bring it back up. And I did that day maybe 3 times or 4. Then that evening she come in. Of course, they was in and out through the day, but that evening I asked them what was going on, and they said that the doctor was ready to hook me up on vent, that he'd be hooking me up that afternoon and put me on morphine. And I told her I didn't want that, and she asked me if I had that in writing, and I said no. And she said, well, it's on the doctor's orders that later on this evening he would make a decision, and that he would see if you would be hooked on the morphine or the vent, because that's what he had planned because of my breathing. And I told the Lord I couldn't take that. I believe I'd give up my will to live if I had to be hooked on a vent. So then she come back and she told me that he decided not to. And from the time that I had come out from seeing the field and the sheep and stuff, I started amending them and began to get better. So it wasn't maybe the next day they took me out of intensive care and put me in a room, a step-down room, and it wasn't just a few days then they released me to come home. I kept recovering. Many times I've seen angels by me. I'd be so sick, feel like I couldn't get my next breath, and I'd have to pray for God to have mercy on me. And then Jesus would touch my breathing, and I would start getting my breath back to where I could get on my feet. And I never had COPD 4th stage, the golden stage in my life. Nor did I know if my dad had it. He had black lung and emphysema, bronchitis. I had asthma for years, bronchitis, and this emphysema and COPD took me off my job, caused me to retire. Oh, My life has been rough. We didn't have but one child because I felt like that I would die before I was 30 years old because of the headaches and pain that I went through from the car accident. But God has watched over me even when I was unworthy and didn't deserve to be treated even halfway like a man. That's He's loved me so much. He loved me more than I can say. And I love the Lord with all my heart. And I know for sure that if something would happen to me, I'd go to meet my Lord. He's took care of me since I didn't know when I was working, if I had to quit work, how I would make it. But I think God's made a way for me. He's always been there in my worst desire. He's been there for me. I've had many nights when I've been up by myself, I would ask him to come and listen to me talk, and I could feel his presence, and I would feel the answer that I needed for the questions that I had. God's always been there. He's took good care of me. I can't even hardly think of getting something on my heart that I want. What God don't give it to me. I remember once when I went out to eat with my mother and to the store, and we stopped at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I thought I'd finished eating, and I thought I'd like to have one more drumstick, but I didn't want to get up and walk to the hot bar to get it, and I thought, well, I'll just let it go. I no sooner thought that than she reached me her drumstick, asked me if I would eat it, that she couldn't hold it. She had it extra, and I thought, God, I know that you're not doing me this way. Just even such thing as a drumstick, God would see that I had it. I can't tell, I can't explain how much I love the Lord, because it's just inexplainable. I know that he loved me enough to give his life for me, and I want to give my life for him. And I want to be ready to meet him, because I know that he's soon coming. And if I don't make it to the rapture and I go by the way of the grave, I don't want nobody grieving for me, because I'm going to be the happiest man to shout down the streets of gold. I don't believe I'll be able to walk down them. I'll have to run. I can't thank the Lord for all that he's done, because I can't remember the many miracles that he's done in my life and in my heart. That he's been the truest friend that I've had. He's been there when I didn't even know he was moving on my behalf. He was moving behind the scene for me. Many things that come my way that I couldn't handle, I put it in his hands and he handled it. He took care of it. Many times I prayed for people and told them what they needed, and he took care of it. And I praise him for it. I love praising him, and I know the Lord loves to be praised, and people fail today to testify of his great love and his works. And we're supposed to praise him for his compassion and his love for mankind and his thoughtfulness, because he don't have no thoughts but good things for us. And we should have good thoughts for things for him, of praising him and worshiping him and glorifying him. That's all I've got to say, I guess.